Thank you all for attending today. As you know, Mayor Keller has been very clear about the need and desire to hire more police officers, and definitely we will second that motion in a lot of different ways. Today we're unveiling the mayor's administration's roadmap to how we're going to go about doing that, to hire more officers. Historically, APD has always kind of taken a wait-and-see approach to this. We really haven't taken a direct method or strategy to increase our staffing and our ranks. But this status quo is not acceptable. We're in issues with crime and other quality of life issues, and we need officers to fill those ranks and help us boots to the ground to make that happen in the city. The mayor has been showing great leadership, and he promised this to the voters during last year's campaign, and this is that effort how it's coming to fruition today. Today we're going to outline that path forward, how we're going to get there. I'm going to introduce Deputy Chief Harold Medina. He's going to talk about the spikes in crime and the patterns over the last 8 years or so, and how we're approaching it, our strategies, what we're doing about it. And then we'll come back and we'll walk through a plan that we have in place right now to how we're going to improve recruitment and hire more officers. So with that, Deputy Chief Medina.
Thank you, Chief. Crime in Albuquerque, as we all know, is the forefront of one of the biggest issues the community brought up during the last campaign. From 2009 to 2012, crime rates, violent crime especially, remained relatively level within the city of Albuquerque. Last year, homicides reached an all-time high within the city of Albuquerque, and since 2014, homicides have skyrocketed up by 150%. Property crimes has been very similar to violent crimes. As you look in our property crime rates in 2010, 2011, as you see that we had lower rates, but since then they've been rising alongside with the violent crime rates. There's a lot of studies out there that indicate that a lot of times your property crime rates go hand in hand with your violent crime rates, and that's why I think it's important that we have a way of addressing all of these in one good plan on addressing crime in the city. As you all are aware, in recent weeks we've become very proactive in addressing the auto theft problem, and when I was in charge of auto theft in 2010, when we had some of the lowest numbers, we were very proactive in going out and enforcing and developing operations and moving forward with technology. The bait cars were brought into the department. We really expanded the use of the bait cars, license plate readers, and other technology. And from 2008, when we had 4,672 auto thefts, we dropped it to 2,773 in 2010, making it some of the lowest auto theft rates that we had at the time. In 2013, we started to see an increase, and from 2013 until now, we've seen 174% increase in auto theft. We've gone from the 2,773 auto thefts in 2010 to a little over 7,600, or right around that area last year. APD recruiting in the past, we were led to believe that more than 1,000 people from each recruiting class were what we were getting, applying, and from those 1,000, we narrowed it down to what we had in the academy. That, in fact, the truth of the matter is we had thousands of people apply, but in reality, we had about 200 show up to actually take the testing, and on average, 28 made the academy. For those reasons, our recruiting has suffered over the years, and we've had a reduction in the amount of officers that we have. In 2009, the department had almost 1,100 officers. We are now at 854, which is a 22% decrease in the amount of officers that we had. What this has led to is that during the peak of those time frames in 2009, 2010, we had a lot of resources assigned to specialized units. If you look at units like our school resource officers, we went from 48 officers throughout the school to currently 8 officers at various schools within the city of Albuquerque. We've gone from 24 narcotics detectives down to 6. Our vice unit is hanging on with 2 detectives. Our white collar crime unit, 6 to 1. Our burglary unit is down from 13 to now burglary has been given as a function of our impact teams at the area command level, which isn't as efficient. Burglary is a very specific crime. I like to focus on residential burglaries, especially because a lot of people who are victims of these crimes, they'll always explain that they felt very violated of somebody being in their home. And now we've made it another function on top of what our impact teams already try to accomplish in their general crimes. And it's very difficult for them to track the cases throughout the city because they do work one area command. Our auto theft night detectives, which were instrumental in the use of the bait cars, deploying the bait cars. You see, they've gone from 19 to 5. Homicide is down to 6. And today's staffing levels for specialized units are only a fraction of what they used to be in 2010. That doesn't mean that we stop covering the crimes. Like I said, a lot of these crimes are now being covered by other general investigative units, but it does become one of the many crimes that they try to investigate. And a lot of these crimes are also investigated by the field, which ties up our officers and why we're looking for different ways to get our officers to enact. The next graph shows the increase in each crime between 2010 and 2017, and you can clearly see that we've had huge increases in our crimes as the number of officers and specialized units has gone down. Our crime is going up with it. At this point in time, we have some plans on recruiting strategies and different things that the department is going to be doing to help us increase the number of officers that we have, and I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Dyer.
Ideally, we can raise compensation for officers. This usually will be the first step in trying to boost the recruitment strategy. In and of itself, it's very limited, and the effectiveness is yet to be seen. Currently, our starting salary is very competitive, but that competitive decreases just after a few years, and we start losing officers in the 3 to 5 year range. We've seen historically other departments, they want their officers to be trained through an academy training, specifically on the East Coast, for example. And what they do, these officers, what they'll do is get hired by a department like Albuquerque, and our academy carries it's well respected. They'll go through our academy, spend some short time in the department as interns, as an internship to come back and then apply for that department, and then there's no cost to those departments in other than what we paid for. So we want to keep them here. We want to keep it as a long-term and a longevity-based retention policy as well. So if you look, and this is a kind of a hard graph to read, but if you look at the black line for Albuquerque, we start out in a pretty good place. We're right in the middle, toward the upper half at the very least. But cities like Austin, Denver, and Aurora have become attractive cities for career police officers. A few years back, Aurora would actually send recruiters to some of the conferences in Albuquerque where APDs was hosting the conference. So the line in the middle with the small squares, that represents the salary plan that we modeled for comparison. And so you can kind of see we're right in the middle again as far as our proposal there. But what this would do is push APD more toward that middle of the pack if we adopt it this year with this year's fiscal budget. So on overtime, the graph shows that the overtime, the number, let me put it this way. The graph shows why the number of officers are decreasing. Obviously, on the other side, the overtime is increasing to make up for the lack of staffing that we have out in the field. The city has relied on overtime to keep officers in the community and keep people safe. We don't want to operate with less than a minimum staffing at any time because that's going to affect things like response time and safety for not only the officers, but most importantly for the citizens. While we're budgeted for as many as 1,000 officers, the money to pay for those extra officers right now is being used to pay these overtime costs. So those salary savings are being deferred to those type of additionary budget concerns. So the reality is we have to pay overtime, while at the same time investing in a more robust recruitment process and attract more new officers. So we want to, we're trying to bring back leadership and emphasis on crime fighting and community policing. That's one of our pillars and our priority objectives right now. So regardless of resources, we're making auto theft that process priority right now. We're #1 in the nation, not something to be proud of particularly. But if we had adequate resources, we could do a lot more. There's no doubt about it. We would be able to cut down on that overall crime. And that particular crime has a nexus to just about every other property and some of the violent crimes that are out there as well, with increased numbers. When you think about the fact that there's a connection to drugs, there's a connection to burglaries, auto burglaries, robberies, even drive-by shootings. We're a very mobile community. Albuquerque is, cars get people around, and that mode of transportation has become very attractive to criminals as well. So skipping ahead to the APD staffing and model assumptions. So what we've done is we've looked at a couple different things here. Is 3-year average of applicants and the numbers lost at each step of the process. These are some of the information we looked at. We looked at a 3-year average of how many laterals are recruited annually, 3-year average annual resignations and retirement, so as well as people coming in, but what's leaving at the other end. The average cost of the officers, including benefits and other costs. I think it could cost about $100,000, so just to bring somebody through the academy and in the department, and then with all the equipment that we issue. And then, so we're targeting the number based on some of these studies is, we'd like to, obviously this is a long-term plan strategy, hire 400 officers over 4 years. So to that end, different ways that we want to kind of catalog and, as far as how do we go about attracting, where do we start? Well, we start by looking at what we're doing now and what's successful, whether this is a billboard campaign or, job fairs and things like that. We looked at how successful, how many, from exit interviews, how many people were actually attracted to the department or applied by the department, what brought them to that, to look at APD in the first place. So we've done different things, but we know we've got to do a lot of different things in terms of how we're going to increase that, because like I said earlier, we've done status quo. This is the way we've always done it. We haven't really thought about or looked at how we can do those changes. So one of the strategies is to attract is we need more people in recruiting and background. We have one full-time recruiter right now, and there's another full-time employee that helps with the backgrounds, and as well as some part-time people that are in and out. But I think that if we don't have the people, we could get 1,000 applicants. 1 or 2 people can't look at 500, background investigations or do any of the other necessary preliminary steps to screen a candidate. So we need more of those, and we've made some efforts there in that direction in terms of increasing that staffing. We also we're looked at in instituting different ways and broadening the way we offer hiring and retention, or basically hiring bonuses has always been the traditional attraction is, we'll give a new recruit, I think it's over a period of time after they get out of the academy and stay with the department, $5,000. And I think some of the information we're finding out now is that it's not as big as attraction as it might be, because these are people who want to be police officers, and that wasn't what was the key factor, is they gave me a $5,000 bonus over a period of time. So we've looked at something a little different as far as referral bonuses. Is we found out that a lot of people in the past few years have actually even told their own family members and friends, APD isn't the place to work. And so one of our things is to change the image and the marketing and the branding of APD and become that department that people want to go to. But in order to do that, we need to get that word out. And so our best referrals are our own people. If every one of the officers brought in a family member in the future, or a friend or neighbor that had asked that question, is, I'm thinking about being a police officer, what do I need to do, and referred them, we'd have double the staffing right now, and that's just with one officer. So we thought about that. There's been some ideas. In addition to, we do offer a small referral bonus to the officers now, that if we took away at the other end, the hiring bonus, and offered a bigger referral bonus, not just to APD, but to every city employee, we would have two benefits. So hopefully we'd get more officers, but that we've had this thing at the beginning where, we have 1,300 people apply and 200 show up. We do make a call before, like the call you get before you get a dentist or doctor's appointment reminding you, but a lot of those people don't show up. So we would want the officers that are the referrers to actually mentor, maybe take these people on ride-alongs before they get hired, help them understand the job, and even maybe drive them wake them up that morning and drive them to the weekend testing or whatever. But it's more of a long-term process where we, groom these people before, if it's what they want. If they don't, we don't waste their time, and they don't, put any extra burdens on us. And we're talking about even a recruitment bus that would go, or a recruitment van or something that would go out and pick people out that, and again, we're talking, metro area candidates. We'd have to have a different strategy for, obviously, for out of state and even out of the city limits. So, but again, it's just one more area. Another area from our study, we found out that, why people aren't making it. And there's a number of different reasons why people don't get hired. And some of them are as simple as, well, we give a fitness, a physical agility test, and they don't pass. I mean, and you figure if you had 6, 7, 8 weeks to prepare, you would at least try to, excel in that or get yourself physically ready. So that disqualifies them at that point, and they're out of that test cycle. They may have to wait a longer period of time before they can even test again. We're going to probably give those people, this is an opportunity where it's, if they were rejected for those reasons, but they can be corrected, like in the background, poor credit can be a problem. It can show some issues. Well, we hire them on like an internship basis where they'll be assigned to different area commands, learn the job as a civilian, would actually be hired. What that does for us before they can get in the academy, but we would give them the physical training, the preparation in that regard. We'd give them time to get their credit in order, things that would have been disqualifiers, and then after a period of time, they'd be eligible for the next class. The biggest benefit with this is we don't lose them. We don't lose them to another department down the road. They get discouraged and don't think they can make APD. So we kind of keep them on board and give them a chance to get back in place and get themselves, more of a preparation to what they need to do. Like there's businesses that teach people how to do resumes and interviews and stuff. This would be something that APD could do. And there's costs associated with this, so you have that in your packet. We haven't done this for a while, but we want to do a recruitment video, and not the typical one that really shows different aspects of what we do, whether it's community policing or what the department's about. I mean, because we have different audiences today than years past. The demographics of the police officers and the diversity that we want in the department. We want to make sure that we do a professional video that is not only out there with that for locally, but it's also for other, whether it's on some of these hiring sites, law enforcement and otherwise, they can actually look and get an indication of what APD is about. And we could show this locally in like movie theaters, like you see, besides just the popcorn ads and the Coke ads and things like that, some kind of promotion that would go on during any active recruitment cycle. It would be more cost effective if we can get that out there, and a lot of people still go to movies. So it also can be shared on social media, YouTube type sites and stuff like that, as far as our website in addition to that. Another area is we only do testing here for Albuquerque, so candidates have to come to Albuquerque, even the out-of-state ones, although we have been reimbursing them for travel and whatnot. It can be a burden on people. So what we'd like to do is find areas that are targeted areas based on certain things that may be going on in those communities, departments that have cutbacks or layoffs or issues with their unions and things like that. Is always an area like when Aurora came down here where they attract officers. And so if we went out and did a test site, brought out some personnel to, say, Dallas, and we tested, we could probably test, hundreds of officers there off-site and over a weekend, get them through the first part of the process, then bring them back to Albuquerque. It might be more cost-effective, and actually we would have more time to actually have one-on-one recruitment efforts and interaction with these candidates rather than a very sterile, here's the paper document, here's what APD, and maybe even a few pictures. So I think that it's a possibility. We've even looked at with military bases across the United States, actually across the world, U.S. bases, do exit interview with their personnel in terms of placement after they get out of the military. And we can do teleconferencing and actually do video recruitment brochures and have a Q&A type session with people live, wherever they may be. They could be overseas, thousands of miles away. At least to get, plant the seed at target audiences to try to recruit these people outside of just, there's a very limited pool of applicants in the metro area as well as in the state. So after a while, a lot of departments are competing for the same people. So we have to think outside the box. We're looking at, again, some of the disqualifiers are things that people do between the ages of 18 and 22 that they probably regret later in life. If we can have programs in schools like we've had a law enforcement academy or Explorer program in the past, we can serve as mentors. We can make sure that we help these people avoid those kind of things. We can help them get the education, whether it's in a program in a junior college or at UNM, as well as just expose them to us as role models. I think we can attract and kind of, guide these people at an early age toward, if this is an inkling they have is to be a law enforcement officer, we don't want it to be a shattered dream when later on they find out because they used drugs or they did, something that maybe was a criminal offense or something that was unethical that would have disqualified them. So again, early intervention and also early, recruitment starts with these young kids. We're reconsidering educational requirements. Right now we have a 2-year degree, but we're trying to see if we can defer that college credit requirement and meet the requirement within other timeframes following graduation from the police academy. We're working a little bit with CNM right now and the state DPS as far as certification is to find ways to get them that degree earlier. CNM already offers college credit for them taking the academy. They get a certain number of hours. I think it's 25 college hours if they complete the 28-week academy. So if they could get some of that before and we can do closure by, even though they don't have it, if they're that close, they could be hired. We are actually looking at a way to reduce the overall academy time by having some of the introductory classes in the academy offered as part of a college criminal justice program. And so people could pay, their tuition, take some of those classes, and in theory, we could offer more academy classes as a result and get more people hired. We, again, that pipeline with CNM right now has a criminal justice program that actually we do internships. We offer, as part of their training, part of their requirements. A lot of retired officers teach that. So, we've got some of our own instructors that have been over there, giving classes. But it's also that apprenticeship and also that mentorship that happens if we had officers go to some of these classes, and again, more of that personal interaction. But that program would be the pipeline in terms of getting people that already have an interest, express it in terms of graduating high school, getting into a program like that, and then we just help them see it through. And then just locally, every department has, people ask, well, what does APD offer, or what kind of problems are you having? And we had a number of issues that were brought to my attention by the APOA, the union, in terms of little morale busters that the officers that, really kind of can discourage an officer sometimes in terms of whether they feel they're supported by the department or the administration or even the city. So, we did some things that they had some concerns about. It's not compliant. It should be complaint stickers. Their take-home vehicle, they wanted us to relook at the policy. It's been changed and very restrictive. And one of the things, the purpose of the take-home policy was to give that aura of omnipresence that we had officers all over. If they could drive, say, to the grocery store or something like that, they'd be more visible in the community. And at one time, that was the purpose, and now being short-staffed, it would be even more, common sense to bring something like that, at least look at under consideration. Plainclothes officers, we were very restrictive, is that all the detective cars had to have government plates. Well, our detectives now are doing double duty. They're also doing surveillance and watching houses, following people, and it's not, pretty much, most of these cars look like police cars anyway, but we've got some new models. If we have government plates on, it could be that scares off the criminal. So we want to kind of have those force multipliers and have our plainclothes officers the ability to, if nothing else, have a plate that is a city plate, but it's not a government plate, so that it's not so readily noticeable by the bad guy, so to speak. Personal weapon policies. I don't know if we'll be able to do anything with that because of the CASA agreement, but these are some of the concerns. Tattoo standards. We have a very strict tattoo standard. In New Mexico, you can't go really anywhere without seeing people with tattoos. So we want to try to stay in tune with the community without being offensive. Again, these are just things under consideration now. But these are issues important to the frontline officers. And so, if you keep your officers happy, it's like in any other business, is, a happy employee is a productive employee, or at least one that will encourage other people to want to get employment here. So again, these cost estimates are, just administrative costs. The cost of 400 different Additional officers would probably range from like 36 million to 40 million, depending on whether we're getting officers at the recruiting, the bottom level, or laterals rehires. So you can move on. So that, basically, we talked about strategies to get the officers at the entry-level stages, but, at the top end, we have people that have already been through the academy. They'd be a quicker turnover in terms of we hire people that have already been officers before. So we're looking at trying to attract, for at least the time being, possibly some more laterals. So one of the things is we've developed is a career development package. We've always had set pays, and it's very discouraging for an officer that has, say, 10 years of experience that would like to be APD, but he's worked in a smaller department in New Mexico. All the benefits are there, but he might actually be losing pay to come to APD if he had to come back and come at a level that was at the 2 or 3 year mark. So we want a career development program that, number one, just the pay shouldn't be the only incentive, but shows other ways that will help an officer, develop, train, find their niche in the department, what works for them, and advance through different pay grades over a period of time. So a 10 or 15-year officer could come in at a level comparable and commensurate with his experience, but he'd be able to come at that pay level as well. And I think that would make a lot of, we've heard through the grapevine, a lot of people would be willing to come over right away if we had a package like that. We also have recently retired police officers. When I say recently, I say probably in the last 3 years or so, that our pensions will deteriorate a little bit with time, as well as it's at a set pay, and when you leave the department, your top 3 years at that point. So if we could get some of those officers, they would be willing to suspend their pensions, come back to Albuquerque, give us a 3 to 5 year commitment. They would raise not only their pension in terms of the value of their pension, but as far as having additional years of service, rises the rate of their accrual for their pension rate. So it's just, again, we're thinking outside the box, trying to figure out ways at both ends to get ourselves up to complete staffing as soon as possible. And then you always have the retention. How do you keep people? Some of the same strategies will overlap, as you can see. Increasing compensation and longevity type benefits will be good, especially toward people toward the end of their careers. If there's that little boost at, say, 18 or 20 years, or for the new officers they have to go 25 at 22, it might give them that encouragement, kind of like a retention bonus, but build it into the compensation plan so they know it's always there. There's no chance of losing it. Some officers, we have officers working 8-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts in some cases. We know that certain officers, will do this for family needs or going to school or personal needs or just personal preferences. We want to offer, like businesses, kind of flexible, not where they split shifts or anything, but where they can have more options in terms of the hours they work and the type of schedules to accommodate their personal needs as well. Diversified training, APD has always been one of the best training. We want to offer training, again, as part of that career development package where people can, kind of meet their career goals and see what really fits their needs. They may not, for example, under a promotion, we have a good leadership program being developed now where rather than just have a traditional testing process, is we isolate or identify leadership candidates, people that have some proven talent early on, and help develop that talent, and through training and experience and apprenticeships and working with mentors at other ranks. So, giving those options are other benefits that aren't written just in a compensation plan. It tells what else the APD offers and what kind of department we are. And these are some of those non-monetary measures, as well as what we talked about before, that will hopefully improve morale internally and keep some of these people here so that they're not disgruntled, and at the end of their 18 years, they're just marking off X's on the calendar to get out of, they can't wait to leave, so to speak. So, is there another slide? No? So that's basically, you've got the package, and that's the overview, and we'll open it up for questions now.
Chief, 2 words stick out at the top of this slide for recruitment strategies, these 2 slides, budget permitting. How do you guys plan to pay for all this?
Well, there's going to be a vote on a tax increase. Where the chips fall, so to speak. Whatever happens, if that happens, that'll be one strategy. If not, we'll have to look at grants or some other funding. we're not like a store that when, money runs out, you have to go, close down and shut the doors. We're going to be available. We'll do something. We'll find some ways to do more with less.
So is APD supporting the tax increase?
Well, we definitely need money, but as far as us supporting it, I mean, it's needed, let's put it that way. But again, we're looking at, just in case, other strategies, make sure that we can fund what we can and have a plan in place, because there's no guarantees.
Do you have any assurances from the mayor that if you don't get the money, that there will be extra money to pay for some of these initiatives?
Well, I mean, as far as assurances in that way, I mean, he's got, there's other, deficits in the city that he has to worry about. I know that he's made public safety a priority, so to that regard, I would say we do have that assurance.
Is there anything on this list that stands out as most critical to you in terms of these recruitment strategies?
Well, we need a quick fix. So I say, our first effort is to prioritize how we can get officers here and get them on the street quickly. So that strategy would probably be looking at the laterals and attracting, having a package that they come in, they go through a short lateral academy, a short period of field training, and then rather than 6 months in the academy and another 3 months, they're out in 2 or 3 months. And so those are the bodies and the boots to the ground that we're looking for.
The amount here at the bottom where it says 36 million to 40 million to recruit, or the cost of recruiting 400 additional officers, is that in total over all 4 years and including the amounts listed to attract new recruits?
I believe it is.
That's for everything then?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not a, just now, and it's
So
going to
this
be.
would be on average 10 million a year that you would need?
I may have to check on that,
Okay.
because I know that some of the budgeting this year is they're still negotiating. So, again, but I believe that is a long-term cost.
Okay.
What's the bigger issue for you when you look at these things? Is it recruitment or retention?
It's chicken and the egg, right? It's both, because we can get, like I just explained over here, we can get people at the top end, but, they're at the pinnacle of their careers. They're not going to be here forever. So even though we fill them, there's still that cycle that has to come from the bottom up. And so I would say we need to look at recruitment, because that's going to be the next 25 years.
One of the slides that interested me most was that crisscross with the people leaving.
Yes.
And so do you think that, I believe that Albuquerque is a stressful place to work for officers. Do you think as you increase the number of officers, that stress and the willingness to stay here would change?
Well, there was a group that were close to retirement. We project, based on the academy date, is a 20-year retirement, who would be leaving. And more people left at that specific date as soon as they had their time. And what we heard from most of them was, yes, the job wasn't what it was anymore. It's a different, now we have the DOJ, you've got national scrutiny on what a lot of officers have done, so you're under the gun more. Officers have been more subject to discipline, even in some cases criminal charges. So it's not as attractive as a job. So again, that's probably why during that time we lost numbers, and at the same time that lack of people on the streets gave the criminals opportunity, as well as other factors as well.
Are you guys waiting for the money to come through before implementing this plan, or are you going to go ahead with some of this stuff that you have funding for and then wait for funding for the rest, or how does this work? When is this all going to?
Well, right now, we're still on last year's fiscal budget, so we've adjusted some fundings and some other money to accommodate some of our needs, not just with personnel, but with other resources. So we'll, depending on what happens, go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and see if we can allocate some of those funds to hire more officers. What we have done, again, getting personnel in recruiting, to get more people processed, things like that, that's underway already. So we're looking at even contract employees if we have to fill those positions.
So this is really just a list of ideally what you need to get that 400 over 4 years?
It's looking at best practices and best strategies, and yes, an ideal, in a ideal world, so. Any other questions?
Is hiring local important for the idea of community policing?
I would say so. Obviously, we have a unique culture and diversity in this city that is a kind of a melting pot in its own, and we'd like the department to reflect that, that same type of, demographics that are there. But If you go anywhere in the state, I think we can recruit, as well as there's diversity across the United States, so, I mean, but we are having trouble getting a lot of out-of-state candidates because of the fact that most, especially with laterals, because if they're in another department, it's not the same pension, and they would have to give up their existing pensions to come to Albuquerque. So that's one of the problems that we have with out-of-state, unless we get them at, a young kid that's willing to transplant to this area. But we are looking for diversity, but sometimes too, that, we're looking for the best qualified candidates, we want top quality rather than let's settle for something that may be less. Does that make sense?
Okay, real good.
Chief, what is your plea to Albuquerque residents who are hesitant to pay more for taxes to increase the police department?
Well, obviously, that's an individual choice. All I can do is, reinforce that we need the officers to keep the city safe. Our officers will continue to do the best they can, but as was mentioned earlier, is sometimes we're overworked, and we don't want to lose any more officers. We want to make this a place where it'll be a place where people can come to a professional department, and again, the city will benefit with that results, is that we got the program out there, and if they can do what they can, do their part to help that happen, we'd be very grateful.
Would the proposed GRT tax take care of all the funding you need, or would you still need additional funding revenue or funding sources on top of that?
Well, I think GRT has been below projections as of late, so we can't really count on that, and there's really no recurring things that we can, fund that much anymore. A lot of our grants and things like that are temporary, and we've had other issues with, with that, as well as with the seizure, asset forfeiture laws and things like that. We've had to pull up money from elsewhere to cover those, where those expenses were covered before.